Welcome to the BuiltOnAir podcast, the variety show for all things Airtable. In each episode, we cover 4 different segments. It's always fresh and different, and lots of fun while you get the insider info on all things Airtable. Our hosts and guests are some of the most senior experts in the Airtable community. Join us live each week on our YouTube channel every Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern, and join our active community at BuiltOnAir.com. Before we begin, a word from our sponsor, On2Air Backups. On2Air Backups provides automated Airtable backups to your cloud storage for secure and reliable data protection. Prevent data loss and set up a secure Airtable backup system with On2Air Backups at On2Air.com. As one customer, Sarah, said, having automated Airtable backups has freed up hours of my time every other week and the fear of losing anything. Longtime customer David states, On2Air Backups might be the most critical piece of the puzzle to guard against unforeseeable disaster. It's easy to set up, and it just works. Join Sarah, David, and hundreds more Airtable users like you to protect your Airtable data with On2Air Backups. Sign up today with promo code BuiltOnAir for a 10% discount. Check them out at On2Air.com. And now let's check out today's episode and see what we built on air.
All right, welcome back to the BuiltOnAir podcast. We are in season 20, episode 5. Good to be back with everybody. Got myself, Camille, and Alli, and special guest John Elliard. Welcome, John.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Good to have John, a new guest with us. We'll learn more about John and his background and story, and he's got some cool stuff to share with us later in the show. First, I'll walk us through what we're going to be doing today. It's an hour-long show, keep you up to date on everything related to Airtable and the world of no-code, low-code. We start with our Around the Bases with all the communities and any news and updates. Then a quick advertisement for On2Air, our primary sponsor. Then we'll learn more about John and his background and story and everything that he's got going on. And then he's going to showcase base that he has, a marketing automation platform for destination marketing. And then a shout out to join our community. And then we're going to wrap up with Camille talking about some new functionality that just came out unannounced. Airtable hasn't announced it. So breaking news for Airtable users. All right. With that, around the bases. First, I'm going to start high level. Some interesting development if you're following the world of AI and how it's going to change your job. This is pretty interesting. So GitHub is, if you're not familiar, it's now owned by Microsoft, and the majority of open source code and developer code is stored inside of GitHub, and they now have the ability to create apps all off of voice. So you can, or off of text, chat-like experience. So you can simply tell it what to build and what to change, and it'll modify the app and everything like that. And so this is pretty interesting. Be following this. Similar to like Airtable. So Airtable now has Copilot. My guess is Copilot right now just creates a base. When it gets to where you can then modify an existing base, that will be kind of similar to this.
Yeah, like add this feature to my base, please.
Yeah. We'll see how advanced Airtable gets with their Copilot. I doubt they get advanced is what GitHub does, but will be interesting to follow.
Absolutely.
Yep. All right. Next one. Staying in the world of AI with Airtable. So Airtable now has the ability to parse web pages. So you can actually give it a URL, and it will parse it and extract the data from that URL. So I think, you have to allow it access to the internet in order to do this. So this is new. Is this live to everyone, or is it still in beta?
I think it was announced.
It was announced, yeah. So,
does anyone know if this affects how many credits each of these calls make, or is it just a new feature?
I don't know. The credits are always a black box to me.
Sure.
I don't believe it does, because as far as I know, like ChatGPT doesn't require more credits to use this. I've used it directly in ChatGPT. So I don't believe so, but possibly. A couple of use cases where you can use this from Ivan: preparing meetings with real-time company news, personalized outreach with enriched prospect data, pulling in latest news company, finding a job title and company. Yeah, I'd be curious if it can parse like a LinkedIn page. So I know LinkedIn is very strict on scraping. I wonder if they let ChatGPT scrape it. That would be cool.
It would certainly save some time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if AI, it gets really good at like page scraping, I can imagine like all of these scraping tools out there, like it might just eliminate that entire industry.
Seriously.
The industry. Interesting. All right, next one. You guys will like this one. Really wish Airtable would stop loading preset on every table. Just keep the name field and leave the rest off, for the love of efficiency and sanity, as well as the 3 empty rows that you got to delete.
Yep.
It messes with your auto number. It's just, yeah. Does it take a lot of time to delete? No, but at the same time, I don't need them.
I guess you could use a managed. Could you do like a managed component of a blank table that only has the name field and add that every time?
It feels so petty.
I know.
That would be funny. That would be funny. The most useful template. There should be in the universe. We got to create that in the universe of like a starting base with just the name and no records.
Right.
Yeah. Back to the scraping. Jen says Cassidy parses LinkedIn. So interesting. All right. Moving on. Let's go into our BuiltOnAir community. Okay, so a change was made for the free tier. If you're on the free plan for any of your workspaces or bases, they're now cracking the whip on API usage. So they've always had limits, but apparently, I didn't know this, apparently they weren't capping you if you were going over the limit. They will start doing that December 2nd. So it looks like they had some freeloaders that were heavy API users.
Probably. Yeah, I think previously they would just increase the rate limit if you went over the limit and just to kind of slow you down. But now they're going to just bar you completely. But I think it's already live for those that have free plans. You can now go see your usage of the API, which is pretty cool. But at the same time is, I don't know.
Yeah.
Scary, but.
Yeah, I think whichever sort of app or service you're using that integrates with Airtable is going to affect how quickly you're going to hit that limit. Some of them are more performant than others. And if it's something like Make, where you have control over what steps you put in your process, it's possible that you could do some optimizing yourself to limit the amount of calls that you make to Airtable. So the hope is that people aren't like severely limited by this, but at the same time, if it's the lowest tier plan and you should be able to you can't put that many records in a free base anyway. So the hope is that you could still get where you're trying to go with a little bit of optimization in there.
Yep. So be aware of that if you're on the free plan. Okay, another one. Ask Airtable AI is now live if you have the AI Labs, which is I guess like the beta version of AI features. And so basically it's a chatbot on the side of your base and you can ask questions about anything inside of the base. kind of interesting.
That I like a lot. I think that's pretty cool. And I think if I remember correctly, you can add it to an interface and it'll respect your permissions. So like if you've said this person can only, like, this data is based on the current user, I think, I haven't tested any of it, but I saw someone type that somewhere. That like
kind of like an AI Clippy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's actually at Airtable. I believe that is how they described it. They were like, "Do you remember Clippy?"
Yeah.
Basically that.
Dan, can you click on that image so we could see what that looks like? It's the right sidebar. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's pretty useful if you're not. Sometimes filters are, to me, straightforward until you need to do something like a filter group, and then it's like, oh, do I do and or, and which one of these is, all of that kind of stuff. So kind of, if you just want, hey, what are my top 5 sellers? It seems like it's really good for like quick insights into some data.
Yeah, Ben Green's prediction: less people will need to learn how to sort, filter, group, or search. They'll just use the Ask AI feature.
That'd be cool. Maybe you can kind of already do this, but I'd be intrigued about using this in an automation, like asking a question and having that output like a report or something you could like put into an email. Yeah.
Like a smarter find records.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. Yeah, so we'll see how this evolves, but definitely exciting. All right. Let's see here. Airtable London tomorrow. If you're in London, there's a meetup there. If you're nearby, I believe I'll have a team member there. So yeah, check out London. Scott Robertson will be there, VP at Airtable. So if you're in the area, check that out.
That's awesome. That's my uncle's name, Scott Robertson.
But not your uncle.
Is he an expert in Airtable?
He is not.
Nope.
Another Scott Robertson.
Yep. Okay. Here's one. We've talked a lot about Notion. They're doing even more. So now it looks like they're getting into the email world where you can actually map or send all your email inbox into Notion, which is interesting. So they're definitely going after like the productivity. I wonder if Airtable will ever consider ingesting. You can kind of map a sync table, but you don't treat Airtable as your inbox.
Yeah.
Do we know if it's like universal, any IMAP provider? Because Airtable's built-in sync sources are, I think, Gmail and Outlook, but those are it. Those are the big two, but there's others.
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, it's interesting. It looks like it's a separate product. Because if you saw there, it was like a different product than their Notion. So I don't know how that will work. Okay, moving on back to the community. Here's a question. It looks like Alli, you're answering this. So dependency manager, that's like in the sidebar, and it will show you the dependencies for different things. Maybe explain here. What's the question, Alli?
They're wondering, because they have a lot of interfaces and a lot of elements, they're just wondering if they can have this be more specific, or if there's a better way of trying to figure out where to actually find where the field is referenced. And I also have been annoyed with how sometimes in the dependencies you can click on it and it'll bring you to that view or to that automation, or I can't remember exactly which one it is, but some of them just don't do anything. But no, unfortunately right now, this is as specific as it gets, which is somewhat useful, which it'll tell you what element on what page in what interface, but it doesn't tell you where in that element it is. So it might be displayed. It might be like, for example, where it says list people here. They might have this field on the list, like actually displayed in the list. It might be used for grouping. It might be used for a back-end filter. It might be used for coloring. So there's a million different places to look. And sometimes I've struggled. I've spent a long time being like, where is this field even referenced?
Yep.
But unfortunately, at least it tells us that it is being used, which is good, but it could be better.
This is more of a user error, I guess, on my part. But in this example, we're saying there's a page called signups, and on that page, there's a list and a grid. It's happened to me many times where I'm eliminating dependencies, and I'll do whatever is the default view for that interface page and forget that I've turned on the additional views. So in this case, there's list and grid. I forget to go to the grid one and remove it from there too, because they have independent settings. And so you'll look back at the dependency checker and it's like, it's still there. I'm like, I'm sure it's not. I just deleted it. It's because there's more. So yeah, being able to click to go to these things would make things so much easier. It's real easy for them to be very hidden.
Yeah. Very true. All right. There's one. Next one. This is kind of a good reminder. I think we did talk about this a few months ago, and there was conversation. So if you're using the default Airtable send as an email action in your automation, it duplicates the to field also in the CC field. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's super confusing, and at first seemed pretty alarming because it was like if I put something in the BCC field, it puts that in the to fields as well, but it's so confusing. But long and short of it is it's just weird. Nobody's actually going to see the BCC except for the person who's in the BCC.
It's at first it seemed like a sort of mild annoyance, and then someone else pointed out, well, if you have in your email client, if you have rules set up that says anytime I'm CC'd on something, treat this mail differently than if I was sent directly to me, and this kind of breaks that kind of workflow. So that I think is a genuine sort of gripe about this, despite it being, it's confusing, like on the surface, but I guess you can get over that. I think the kind of eliminating people being able to use rules in their whatever their email client is kind of makes it like a breaking change. My reading of Airtable's explanation of why they did this, it sounded like it was a compliance thing, but I don't know of other platforms that do this. So I don't know why they actually made this change. I genuinely can't think of another platform that allows you to send emails that treats the CC and BCC like this.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So just be aware, if you're testing that out. If you use the Gmail or the Outlook send as, those don't behave that way. It's just the default Airtable email send. Okay. This was happening the other day. I think Alli, you mentioned this as well. So was it breaking any automation that used console.log?
Well, it didn't. So they claim that it didn't break them, that they were still running, but they just weren't logging anything to the console. But I discovered it while I was working with a client and trying to set up an automation script, and I couldn't see what it was doing because it wasn't logging anything to the console, but it wasn't working the way that I expected it to. And when I copied the code and put it into the scripting extension and ran it, it worked, but it didn't in the automation. So I don't know. They claim everything was fine, aside from not being able to log anything. But
did it come back?
Yeah, I believe it's fixed now. Yes.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay, yeah, that could be scary. You're like, oh, there's an error, but it's weird because it says it ran successfully. So it, like in the history, it showed that it successfully ran. But if you maybe looked, then they were showing an error.
Yeah, I had never seen it before, and I was on with a client, and I was like, I have never seen this error. I was like, I'm pretty sure this is an Airtable problem.
Yeah. The error was too specific. Oftentimes it's just an error occurred,
Right.
or it's like specific to the code. It says like some named variable doesn't exist, that kind of thing. But that happens in any sort of JavaScript thing when you declare too early or too late. This felt like, what on earth is happening? What do you mean preserving console logs? What are you doing?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Looks like it got resolved last night.
Also, they are not available sounds so matter of fact.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
This error message fascinates me.
It was kind of funny. It's just they're not there.
They're
Sorry.
not available.
The logs are not available. They went on vacation.
And thank you, Justin, for keeping us all updated too. I appreciate that.
Yep. Okay, next one, also from the BuiltOnAir community, also from Justin. Conditional field visibility in interface pages appears to work fine on mobile, at least iOS. However, conditional button visibility on interface pages doesn't work on iOS, even though it works on desktop.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else seen that?
Yes.
I don't have an iPhone.
No, I have noticed that the buttons just don't even show up most of the time. I've been having some weird issues with iOS and interfaces. Just sometimes it's editable, sometimes it's not. It's just some really weird stuff going on. But I was actually pleasantly surprised that now the record review is mobile friendly, which I'm very happy about, and the conditional visibility works on it on the phone. So that was very nice.
That's cool. That's news. I don't think I've seen that.
Yeah.
Record review is like one of the most used ones, I think, for me in terms of layouts that I end up working with. So it being mobile friendly is nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also noticed that the conditional colors on the number elements don't seem to show up on the phone either.
Okay, well, that seems like the easiest one.
Yeah.
There's no security, implications there. It's just make it blue.
Exactly.
All right.
They all showed up as just white.
Yeah. And Justin chimes in. My final follow-up has the info. It's a very niche set of conditions that will break the button visibility behavior. So.
Okay.
Jen says, what? Yeah, so weird stuff there. Okay, that concludes all of our roundup. And keeping you up to date, I don't believe there is any announced features from Airtable. Still digesting some of the stuff they put out recently. So with that, shout out to OntoAir. If you're running your business on Airtable, best practice is to make sure your data is stored outside of Airtable. And that's where OntoAir comes in. It'll back up your data, store it into Box, Dropbox, Google Drive. And we officially just launched OneDrive. So if you're a Microsoft ecosystem, we now support OneDrive. We also implemented an audit system. So we now will audit your backups and send you an email once a month to let you know where things are working or not working. So you know if your backup's working or if it's failed. Sometimes the connection needs to get restored or reconnected to your destination. And so we now have a summary that gives you a very nice detailed view of everything that's going on. All the attachments, sometimes attachments are corrupt and they don't get backed up for usually Airtable reasons. And so this will give you insight into all of that. So excited. This was a big feature release and we now support OneDrive. So excited for that. Check it out. Use code BuiltOnAir for a discount and get started today to make sure your data is stored outside of Airtable. And you can also restore it as well if you need to. Okay, Jonathan, let's learn a little bit about Jonathan. Let me get you on the big screen here.
Sure.
All right, Alli, take it away.
Awesome. John, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you. I know it's your first time with us, so thank you very much for taking the time.
Absolutely.
Excellent. So John and I actually know each other in real life. We have the same home state. We're from New Hampshire, which is awesome. And I can't wait to learn more about NH Rocks and everything that you're doing with Airtable. So let's we usually start out by asking, how did you find this world? What brought you into the Airtable community, and how did you make that discovery?
Sure. So I kind of by accident or necessity is the best way to describe it. I started NH Rocks in 2017, and we launched right before the pandemic in 2019. The whole concept is better bridging economic development and tourism as a means of funding community development projects. So the idea basically is tightening local economies with technology. And after a few various website iterations, I kind of wanted more control, a little bit more of a streamlined process. And that's kind of how I found Airtable. So while we were pivoting more towards a marketing company to kind of survive 2019 and the start and eventual conclusion of the pandemic, we launched a number of marketing services, but then also put everything that we had on NH Rocks, including our thousands of data points and locations and the rest, into Airtable to better manage the database. And then that's kind of how I learned about Softer and ultimately just fell in love with this low code, no code world, and have since kind of really dove in further and jumped in with both feet. And now my business partner runs most of the marketing stuff, and I handle a lot of the automation and integration stuff. And it's been great.
Super, super cool. Were there other tools that you had tried before Airtable that just weren't cutting it?
Well, I think I made probably one of the mistakes every early founder does, and I went right to proprietary code where I didn't have any sort of experience. So after losing a few $1,000s and learning how expensive it is to host and manage the data and manipulate that, and essentially biting off more than I could chew from a coding standpoint, that's when I kind of went right into Airtable. So fortunately, as I was kind of floundering through finding platforms, that is how, through personal connections, I learned about Airtable kind of second degree from you, Alli, where for those that don't know, my girlfriend and Alli knew each other first. And then that's how my girlfriend got onto Airtable. And she's like, John, you would love this. You have a mind that can think this through. Like, here's this platform. And like a duck to water. Like, everything then basically got imported into it. And I just loved it. I just loved everything about it. So, now I guess I got lucky in that regard, where a lot of the connections aligned up and the stars aligned for me to find Airtable on the first bet. But now, I use Airtable. I'm familiar with a whole slew through the marketing side of various platforms. Like, we're a Keep agency partner, and I know some people on the call don't like Keep, as I have heard. But it's, we're familiar with all that. Obviously, I was an early Softer expert, and now I'm learning Bubble as well. So it's just a number of different platforms, but Airtable continues to be like the rock for its ease of use and flexibility.
Absolutely. So when you have loaded all your stuff into Airtable, what kind of stuff are we talking about? Where I know you've focused a lot on New Hampshire to start, and I think you're aiming to expand that,
Yes.
if I'm not mistaken. Tell us a little bit more about like what NH Rocks does.
Sure. So on the marketing side, it's full digital ecosystem management. So at this point now, we're building out like databases, collaborative databases, running them into various front ends. So either Softer or Bubble at this point. If I'm doing like a Bubble build, like we just finished one that is going to be, actually it's an organization called the Grand Estate Ambassadors. They're one of the largest volunteer organizations in New Hampshire, and they're a statewide entity. They manage all the welcome centers, our local regional airport, things like that. So we just built all of that out on Bubble after various kind of iterations through a softer front end, and we're still using Airtable kind of as a backup database. So Bubble will allow us to kind of populate, and then through API calls, we're running it all there. So Dan, to your earlier point about backing up data, that's how we're actually doing this and kind of keeping everything in the same world. And then we're also using that entity to entity, so they have various partners as well. And then we're using basically Airtable as their mass entity aggregate to pull in information from their partners, allow them to run various reports. So on the development side, that's kind of what we're doing and what we're running. On the marketing side, we can do media. We have a drone videographer on site, or on staff rather. And my business partner is just phenomenal at everything marketing. So it's a lot of growth strategy and optimization, essentially, where he does the marketing and growth and I'll do the optimization.
Super, super cool. What is next for NH Rocks? And are you missing anything from Airtable that you're hoping that they might come out with to help you with your roadmap?
Well, so next for us is kind of continuing in this work. While we're building and expanding the NH Rocks site itself. So if anyone went to nhrocks.com, that's the destination marketing platform. So that was the proof of concept essentially for destination marketing and what we're trying to do for better connecting economic development and tourism. But that's kind of like our ongoing project. That's like obviously my passion project. We formed a nonprofit for that. So that all funds from that platform can go towards that for actual like positive use for community development projects. But we're largely taking a lot of the marketing out. So what comes next on that is hopefully more development work. I really want to do a lot more of this. Like I said, I love it. And I just I'm hungry for more experience. I'm hungry for more knowledge. I really want to just kind of want to continue to help people. So we're really kind of diving into that more, expanding more of our marketing portfolio. And then I guess as far as, what Airtable could do, it's kind of hard to ask for things because it already does so much and I'm already psyched about what it does do. And admittedly, there's so much more for me to learn about Airtable. While I feel like I can solve most problems that are presented to me, like out of the back, I just want to know like all of the elements. So like when I think about what Airtable could do, I guess my first one that I struggle with or want to have immediate more experience in is the interfaces and having those be a little bit more like public facing. Where, for somebody that's accustomed to, at this point, if anyone doesn't know the demographic of New Hampshire, we're routinely the second and third eldest state in the country. And so when you're dealing with that demographic, like one-click actions, edit records, things like that, extremely simplified user experience is hypercritical. And trying to onboard them, even to something like a software, which does make, rapid deployment easy and aesthetics easy. I think there's still a little bit of a gap there. So that's where I'd like to see Airtable kind of go, is a little bit more in that space where the interfaces can be kind of more like app stylized. That just makes it easy to use from your phone and like things that are a little more out of the box for our older people. Yeah,
no, I couldn't agree more. And you just taught me something. I had no idea about New Hampshire. So that is interesting.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of fun. But that kind of, explains some of the things that you see around here.
That's why Alli had to leave. She didn't fit that demographic.
Yeah, it makes sense when you go
down, Alli.
I'll be back soon enough. New Hampshire is near and dear to my heart.
It's great if you want to do like outdoor rec and things like that. You know, we do have some really wonderful things. Activity within proximity is another one. So if you're a person that likes to do things and doesn't like to pay a lot of taxes, this is great for you, I guess. But like, it is old. So the social life, just be careful. Come with people.
So do you exclusively only work with New Hampshire companies?
No, we did for a while, but
Okay.
now that, you know, we're looking at we did basically until the beginning of this year. But now that we're largely rolling the NH Rocks brand into the nonprofit that we formed, we're chasing all other companies through development and marketing on the other side. So we're happy to work with anybody. Some of the experiences we have largely are like nonprofit work. I'm even building out another app, a program management app for another nonprofit here in New Hampshire, just because we have good connections here. But we have experience in like medical products, nonprofits, healthcare, home care, you know, things along those. Would love to do more in like outdoor rec or venture capitalists or anything along those lines. Just so long as you're good people, we want to work with you.
Excellent. I like it. All right. Well, I'm looking
Very
forward
cool.
to seeing what you've got to show us.
Sure.
Yeah, if you want to share your screen, I'll quickly intro you.
Sure.
Bring this back. Awesome. And people can find you nhrocks.com. Is that your website?
Yep, nhrocks.com. The marketing tab off of that shows you where that is, or you can email me straight out at jonjohn@nhrocks.com. And right there.
Awesome. And now John's going to show us his base, how the magic is made.
All the magic. All
There
right.
you go. Okay.
So I'll just open it up more. Let me know if it's still too small to see. But this is our preliminary destination marketing base. You know, we have roughly 2,000 or so records live, 2,000 or so still to be cleaned. But this is, as far as I know, the most comprehensive database of activities and things to do in New Hampshire. And it's at least competitive with the state's tourism department, which is pretty huge. So these are all our approved listings. These we have segmented out for various speed considerations on the front end within Softer. If I switch it over, I don't know if I can. No, it'll just show the tab. But if I show it here, where is it? Oh, it's right here. I'll share this tab just to show you. This is the main front end. So these would be those views broken out for speed. And this is all custom code on the front end for Softer that we had to kind of fill out. But that also illustrates what you can do with Softer and just a little bit of this kind of no to low code ecosystem, which is huge. And then we built out like the whole search function kind of all through here. I don't know why that wasn't loading, but that's what will get you through all of these records and their various seasonal designations. We also built in like a bucket list feature. So this is so that everyone can kind of keep track of their things they do. So this is all dynamic, kind of based on what they want to pull, which is nice. Let me see. We also started to bring in, like, this was our test, but we set up a multi-vendor marketplace all through Stripe and Softer and Airtable. So that's built off of Stripe Connect, which is one of those ones that I wish were a little bit easier to implement. But, you know, they do a great job in what they do, but it's hard to kind of put in. But we were able to get this in either through, like, Make. We did a lot through that, which was nice. Let me see what else we have. Our events. So this one's just ongoing. So this one's 450 events that we've been kind of scraping and pulling ourselves. And then we put in various conditional views so that if we need to approve any, we can see them. No contact, no owner stuff. So this is our main live base, and there's really only 3 people that have access to it. So I don't mind doing the views, and we can lock these if we need to, but haven't really had much of an issue in that. There's a number we put together, like ratings, so that you can view what those all are. You know, we've also put in the the SEO considerations for front end and Airtable and Softer. I will say for anyone that's like looking to do kind of like a B2C style app like this, when you have this many records and so many things that are sharing the name of either your website or what you're putting in the blog, because we have a few of these blog entries that pull as well. And I've talked to Softer about this a lot, but the SEO data seems to be pulled from various locations, so it's not always consistent. And they basically, Softer has told me that that's a lot of it is just because it's coming from different locations and it's not sure where to source. They have basically hard coded some of it for our site to point to the right thing, but even still, some of the SEO elements don't come through. So that is something for people to be mindful of. But other than that, it's been really, really lovely and wonderful, and super easy to integrate. This is actually largely like just an automation function that we have built in that auto populates that over. We also had to recreate that for like all of the regions and counties. So this is just like a 200 plus if then formula, which was a lot of fun to put together. But as it turns out, a lot of people don't know which region or county they live in by state standard. So you can't give them that option to choose because it's going to screw everything up. But that's how we basically did that. Some good lessons learned here. We would have pulled this off into its own database. Similarly, we would have pulled the images, because as these are starting to come through, that can impact Softer speed. So I would have pulled these into a secondary database if I were doing this whole thing over again. And we've done that into other builds on Airtable, just for speed considerations. That way you have primary data coming through to Softer first. The page loads so people can actually engage with it. And then that secondary information comes through and the page will shift and adjust as needed. I guess into some of our automations, this is where this is with the GSA. That was the application I built out. We're actually partnered with them entity to entity, just because this goes back to the tourism economic thing. We're really trying to build, just through that effort, like a network of partners and nonprofits, so that you have one singular source that does positive work for you to find things to do, events, things like that. So we wanted to get volunteers on there. So we integrated them into this, and we have like a magic link that goes out and onboards their users, various claimed alerts that come right into our Slack, and ties in the organization at large, auto expire for events, feedbacks. This is our SEO automation. So when people add their own, because it's a full self-service portal, when people add their own listing, we auto-populate the SEO data. And to that point, the platform itself is fully self-service, so anyone can log in, they can claim a record, we approve that record, then they can add their media, they can upload their payment membership through Stripe, anything like that. This would be our search and our do list, bucket list ad. We wanted something that's a little bit more like action oriented, so we went with the do list, but and then this was an original event creation. So this was solving for recurring events, which was its own very fun challenge. And this also kind of came up secondly when we were building out, I guess, this automation, which I can show. So this is the Grand Estate Ambassadors that we built out, where they had wanted, this is a volunteer engine, but basically a way to do recurring events, kind of like a time clock calendar. This was a really fun development where we built out one whole thing, and then they basically said that we didn't want something that was central to the whole base structure. Then we had to build out a whole new base. So that was very exciting. But that was like the time clock and full calendar scheduling everything. So that was a bit of a challenge, but we were able to kind of repurpose that for the NH Rocks. So that would be like when this data is empty, do the rest. Yeah, I mean, there's plenty here. Upcoming weekend events to keep. So that's going out to our email software. So we have the whole automation built there, and that alerts people to like different events coming up. We were able to, if you put in your zip code, we have a radius thing around it, so you can auto send based on radius, and we built all that out. And that's kind of that. So that's largely like where we're at for NH Rocks and what we're trying to do there. Obviously touched a little bit on some of the other bases that we have built for like the Granite State ambassadors and the rest. I guess the other thing to talk about is what we were able to bring in. So this is another organization we're working with called NH Made, because they're going to be our launch partner for the multi-vendor marketplace. So we did a tie-in to their Shopify that pulls all of their Shopify into Airtable. Again, Airtable acting as the entity aggregator. So then this way we can then populate their products after going through a few conditional filters into our Airtable and then onto our front end. So that, I guess, is kind of where we're at now, without going into other client stuff. But yeah, open to questions, concerns, mentions, anything like that.
So is the plan, if I understood correctly, are you planning to potentially like package what you built for NH Rocks and sell that to other destination locations, or would you host all of them inside of your base?
So the plan for the destination marketing organization is essentially to repurpose it and work with other governments to showcase the fact that we can tighten local economies and then use that, basically that extra income from that for community development projects. This is also kind of what I got like my undergrads in econ, my MBAs in community economic development focused on this particular thing. So like I'm super passionate about the intersection of tourism and economic development via technology. So our hope is really to replicate this once we have broken ground on some kind of attainable housing effort through the nonprofit, and build it out that way. But that's like a nonprofit element that we're doing. The rest on the Airtable or Bubble or Softer is really to kind of continue to help companies build, scale, and optimize. We have a lot of effective go-to-market strategies, and really knowledgeable and friendly for marketing and now this. And hopefully, at least for me, I really want to kind of continue to work in the Airtable and no-code space, especially since like that nonprofit effort at this point is at the board level, so not fully on my plate, which is nice. It's a big project, so not having that be the day-to-day, and then also having like being able to actually focus on this development work is extremely fulfilling.
Very cool. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. We love seeing real world production bases and how it's changing people's lives and working through real use cases. So thank you, John, for sharing that.
Absolutely. Thanks for letting me.
Okay, let's move on. Quick shout out. If you are not in our BuiltOnAir community with John, Alli, Camille, and myself, join us at BuiltOnAir.com. I'm going to show cool posts we put on LinkedIn. We had a handful of the community members of some of the experts that get together on a regular basis. We're all there. We got to take a picture with everybody. So this community is awesome. We'd love to have you part of it if you're not already. And thank you to all those that are already part of it. And it's great to meet a lot of you in person and continue the dialogue. So join us, builtonair.com/join. It's free to join, get access. There's thousands of members in there talking about Airtable all the time. So please join us. Yeah. With that, Camille, just learned some new functionality unannounced.
Yeah, so credit to Ben Bailey, who is, I think, our most vigilant person in the BuiltOnAir Slack community. I feel like it's between him and Russell, I think, discover all of the new Airtable features before they're announced. So there is something a little bit janky about this feature that I'm about to go through, but in Airtable's defense, it is unannounced. So I don't necessarily think we're supposed to look at it yet. It does work. And that feature is importing data via a CSV from an interface page. Now, if I edit this interface page, and you have to be on the outermost sort of section, the whole page, rather than an individual component like this, the list view. On the whole page, if you scroll all the way to the bottom, export data as a CSV has been there for quite some time, but the new one is allow users to import data as a CSV. So some cool things about this is that you can have specific fields be enabled versus disabled. So like obviously a formula field you can't really import anything into, but in this particular example, I have a full name field that concatenates first name and last name together. Those are individual fields that are hidden on the interface, but I can have them enabled for the import. So I think it's nice that they don't necessarily have to be a one-to-one. And also, just because I'm displaying date to the user, I don't have to have that be enabled. So it won't allow someone, if they import a CSV, to import into the date field if I don't enable it there. So that's nice. And then what's also nice is they have the ability to add new select options. So you don't, kick out records that should be imported but can't because they, the select field doesn't have that option quite yet, regardless of their edit permissions. So that's nice. Some things that aren't here are any sort of notion about who can import records. If you have an editor level access to this interface page, you can import to CSV. It's not anything that can be locked down, and it's not something that can be hidden either. So, certain buttons in an interface can be hidden by certain conditions. You can't do that with this option. Just something to keep in mind. I'm going to publish that change. And then what I'm going to do is hop over to Mockaroo. So what I'm going to do, I don't need 1,000 records. Let's just say I want 10 records in the form of a CSV. I'm going to generate some data. And then if I hop back over to import a CSV, the first thing that I'll note that is a little janky, I can't close out of this. I'm pressing this X button. I'm hitting escape. I can't leave. You have to do, and you click over here. You have to refresh the page or navigate elsewhere. That's the first thing that's just a tad janky. But let's say I do want to import. I discovered that accidentally, that you can't leave. So importing, that was a very small file, so obviously it imported very well. I have noticed that I feel, and this is sort of a gut feeling, I don't really have evidence for that. I think the field detection is a little bit worse than the table level import a CSV. If we look back at my Mockaroo, first name, it was first underscore name, last name underscore name. It doesn't seem to be matching up the way that I expected with email. It matched with email, but but just like with a table level import, you can modify this. The second thing that's a little janky, it marks first name as the primary field. I think that's confusing. First name is not the primary field of this table. It's full name, which is hidden. I think what it means is first name is the first column that I have enabled for importing. And I think this is a holdover from the table level import CSV. I think they should get rid of this. It's not helpful. And it's also required because it's the primary field. It's not the primary field. It shouldn't be required. But but I can go in and change it. So first name is actually first name, last name is actually last name, email is email. I don't think I have an ID as a number. Checkbox in checkbox. So I'm getting a little warning symbol because what Makaru outputted was either the word true or false for a Boolean. Airtable does accurately recognize true versus false in Boolean format. That warning is just a little bit, a little bit more cautious than it needs to be. And then the last thing that I would want to do is click on other settings down here and exclude first row from import. In the table level import CSV, you have to do that too. So it's consistent there. Most often, you're going to be importing a CSV that has a header row. I feel like this should be on by default, but it's neither here nor there. And then the last thing is there's a second option to create missing select options. So the reason why there's two different places to make this choice, I believe, is because as a configurator, as a creator for this base/interface, you could make the decision whomever has access should be able to create new select options. And then this setting down here is whether or not the person actually doing the importing wants to create new select options. So a little bit different of a choice that's being made. And so to me, it makes sense for it to ask twice, if you will. So if I hit import, it's going to import, and then it does it. So pretty straightforward. I like the specificity of the toast that comes up in the bottom corner. You've successfully imported 10 new records into the registration table. So all of the data that you would want in a success message. And it seems to work pretty smoothly in terms of actually doing the importing of the records. It's just those two little things that I think need to be touched up for it to be less confusing to the user. And just in general, you should be able to close a modal. It's strange that you can't. So that's basically it for the page level import of a interface page. Is one of these like full screen list/grid views. It doesn't matter what visualization you have turned on. If this were a timeline or a calendar, it would have worked just the same. I haven't tested on a detail page that has a CSV or has a list or a grid or something on that, if that's an option yet.
Alicia asks or mentions she wishes it allowed for merging of data.
Yes. So I'll pop back into this base really quickly. If I were to import data CSV, you'll notice a very similar experience, except I can close out of that modal Airtable. But there's also, if you go into the extensions and pull out CSV import, this is the only Airtable specific, produced by Airtable option to import a CSV that will merge records together without doing something like the emailed CSV sync option. This sort of behavior is not carried over to the table level nor to the interface level import CSV. It would certainly be nice if you could pick a match field or something like that. Like if I had email and said, don't create any new records that have the same email, just update the existing one. That would be great. It's not a feature.
Yeah. I'm interested to see. Now, I would assume if you were to go look at the created by for those, it recognizes who loaded those records, I would think.
Well, let's just see. Created by.
Nice.
All me, which is accurate. I'm the one who did all of these.
That is good. And did you say whether or not you can include linked record fields in those enabled fields?
I have not tried. So let's try that again. If I go into edit and then adjust my enabled fields, there is no all fields button as a shortcut. That's another, I wouldn't call that janky. It would be nice to have. It won't let me click enable.
Okay.
It's also like crossed out,
Yeah.
not supported by CSV import. So I suppose that's consistent. So the other ones that are crossed out, by the way, are created by and name. Name in this case is a formula. So makes sense. I shouldn't be able to overwrite a calculated field. Linked records, a little disappointing, but sometimes what I'll have is a secondary field. I'll just have like a text field and do a copy and paste afterward into a linked record.
I can't remember. Does the CSV importer extension support linked records? It does.
Oh, I don't remember.
I think it does, but I can't. Don't quote me on it. I'm pretty sure it does. But
if it does, what the only restriction I could think of is if the primary field is a formula, it might not let you, or it might like skip those records where it can't create the linked record that would match that condition because it is a formula field. So that makes sense because that's consistent.
Yeah.
In this case, this is a link. This is a formula field. Is the record ID.
Maybe that's why it didn't allow you.
Let's do a quick test. Rooms. You were going to say something.
Yeah, I was just like, I'm interested about the linked record capabilities here. Like, if we were to go on a detail page and look at, like, say you have somebody logging in. Yeah, that's a bummer. But yeah. I mean, there are dangers, you know, with allowing somebody to import and touch those linked record fields for sure. But like, if we were to have like what you're doing now, if you're on a record and you want to be able to, like, say, turn this into somewhere where you can have an external user log in and import their own data that's already linked to the record that they're looking at, that would be a use case that I would find very useful.
I would agree. But I've just, while you were explaining something I entirely agree with, doesn't seem to be possible.
No.
So we just have the option to allow them to export the CSV. And then really quickly, I also tried with another linked record that didn't have the opposing table with a formula field. It was a regular text, and I can't do that one either. So just in general, linked records are not compatible with the import CSV on the interface side. And that might explain why it's not available on a detail page too, because it's the same sort of mechanism. But this would be so helpful if it were there. It's great that it's here. It'd be even better if it were also here.
Exactly. Like, this is where I would be excited about seeing this feature.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, okay, I want to upload data specifically to this record, like linked to this record. Yeah, that would be really cool.
Awesome. Great. Thank you, Camille. That concludes today's show. Thank you all for joining. John, thank you. Appreciate you. We'll get you back on in a bit and get an update on everything.
Would love that. Thank you again for having me on.
Very cool. And we will see everybody next week for Built on Air. Take care.
Yay.
Thank you for joining today's episode. We hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to check out our sponsor, OnToAir Backups, automated backups for Airtable. We'll see you next time on the Built on Air podcast.